as we inch closer to Election Day, courts are taking up battles over key voting issues across the country. Yesterday, the state Supreme Court in Texas ruled that each county can only have one ballot drop-off location. Governor Greg Abbott says the move will help prevent voter fraud. Opponents argue otherwise, claiming the governor is looking to suppress votes. In Wisconsin, all ballots have to be received by 8 p.m. on Election Day or they will not count. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a lower court's ruling that allowed the deadline to be extended 6 days after the election. And in Michigan, people can openly carry guns within 100 feet of polling places. The Secretary of State there had issued a ban, but a judge blocked that decision. The Michigan Secretary of State and Attorney General plan to appeal. For more on this perspective, let us bring in Weijia Jiang, who is joining us from the White House. Weijia, Wisconsin, key part of the president's win in 2016. He made the state an important part of his campaign strategy this time around, holding a rally there yesterday. What does the latest ruling about the ballots mean for the president? What are you hearing from insiders at the White House?
Well, the White House and the campaign certainly are treating this as a victory because, for them, there is a black and white line. And if it's, not received by Election Day, they do not believe that the votes should count, even though in other states, as long as it's postmarked by Election Day, it will. But this is part of the broader conversation that the president has been having for so many months now about how the mail-in ballot process should and should not work. And he's really relying on this argument that he has crafted that, there's some sort of fraud that will be involved if, states continue to count ballots afterward. But, even leaders in his own administration are warning that we probably won't have a result on Election Day for that very reason, because each state, as we just saw, has a different set of rules. And you're right, Wisconsin is a critical one for President Trump. He was able to flip it along with Michigan in 2016 from blue to red, and he is working overtime to try to protect that, even though it is a really tight race in both of those states.
So Vlad mentioned, the many significant court decisions, including Texas. Our CBS News Battleground tracker shows that President Trump and Biden are actually very close in Texas. As we heard in Ed's piece, Biden campaigned in Georgia yesterday as well. Meanwhile, the president has really focused on shoring up some of the votes that he got in the last election, even going to Nebraska, as Ed mentioned, for one electoral vote there. So I want to know, are you hearing anything from the White House? Just how concerned are they about the president being able to maintain some areas that are supposed to be, some states that are supposed to be traditional Republican strongholds? Clearly, Joe Biden is sort of reaching out into those strongholds in the hopes of getting some votes there as well.
Right. The fact that Joe Biden even went to Georgia is very telling because the Democrats would argue that it shows he has the confidence that he might be able to turn the wave there and to capture a state that, traditionally he would not be able to. And that it also shows that he's not going to some of those other critical battleground states. Georgia traditionally would not be one because he has, so much confidence that he will maintain an edge as national polls and our own CBS News Battleground tracker polls show. But if you ask the Trump campaign, they'll tell you not to buy into those numbers and that they are not worried about traditionally red states because they're really relying on Election Day and the voter turnout, the physical turnout on Election Day. So even though, the numbers show that more Democrats are voting by mail and that they are turning out in historic numbers, the Trump campaign says that doesn't matter because they still are not going to be able to make up for the competition that they're going to have on Election Day, and they really believe that enough people will turn out, even though we are in the middle of a pandemic, to cast their ballot.
It's interesting, Weijia. You mentioned the rally in Nebraska. There's some reporting out there that hundreds of Trump supporters were stuck in the cold for hours and couldn't reach their bus and couldn't reach that rally that the president held. It's sort of interesting to me that he's holding these rallies, and as Nicole Skanga pointed out, he's going to be holding something like 10 rallies over the next couple of days, maybe more.
Right.
You know, it's sort of interesting. I wonder if you're hearing from the White House that they believe that these rallies are working, because unlike 2016, and you know, the election is going to be close, as Anthony Salvanto and Ed O'Keefe have been telling us. But what's interesting to me is that in 2016, you were seeing Hillary Clinton's numbers dropping in some of those key battleground states. President Trump, candidate Trump, was chipping away at those numbers as he continued to do more rallies back in 2016. We haven't seen that really with Biden. We've seen the numbers pretty much holding steady. They're close. In some cases, they're, you know, up 2 points or maybe 4 points. So sometimes even within the margin of error, but they're not falling the way we saw with Secretary Clinton. So are you hearing that the campaign believes that these rallies are working for the president?
They really do. They believe that, you know, this is not about trying to persuade that voter who is looking at candidate Donald Trump for the first time to give him their support, but they're really, you know, trying to make sure that people who did turn out for him do it again, to make sure that that supporter has the enthusiasm that they feel from these rallies, from seeing President Trump deliver remarks on a stage in person, that will motivate them not only to cast their own ballot, but to make sure their friends and family members do as well, because they think this enthusiasm factor is going to make or break this contest. And that's why you hear President Trump saying so often that it is exactly what Joe Biden lacks. It is interesting that he did point out yesterday that, you know, the crowds that former President Obama and Joe Biden are drawing are so small in comparison to his. In fact, he even tweeted out a side-by-side shot of his rally, which had thousands and thousands of people, and Joe Biden's, which had socially distanced circles, sort of as a sign of victory that he was able to draw so many people. But Vlad and Anne-Marie, again, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and Biden and Obama, you know, want to make sure that their guests can practice social distancing, whereas the Trump campaign and the president, you know, make the case that we're rounding a corner and there's nothing to fear. And so, you know, I think that's what you're seeing play out in real time. Again, the campaign believes that, you know, this excitement and this celebration is going to translate into more support at the polls on Election Day.
All right. Weijia Jiang for us at the White House. Weijia, as always, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.